When I get you back, oh yeah. When I get you back, oh yeah. When I get you back, oh yeah. I promise you'll never leave me. When it comes to you and me, there's no one else I'd rather be with. Baby, I won't let you down. I got it, I know you need it. Love is it when you're around. Oh, please say that you believe it. 'Cause I don't wanna lose you. I hope you feel that way too. No, I don't wanna lose you. Baby, don't go. Don't go. When I get you back, oh yeah. When I get you back, oh yeah. When I get you back, oh yeah. Oh, when I get you back, oh yeah. Cause I don't wanna lose you. I hope you feel that way too. No, I don't wanna lose you. Baby, don't go. Oh, when I get you back, oh yeah. I promise you'll never leave me. When it comes to you and me, there's no one else I'd rather be with. When I get you back, oh yeah. Oh. When I get you back, oh yeah. Oh, when I get you back, oh yeah. Oh, when I get you back, oh yeah.
Love should be easy. Why should it not? When all you want is to be loved, is to be loved. But love ain't easy. You taught me that. I let you in, now you want out, now you want out. I don't understand why you hurt me. I don't understand why you wanna let me down. Can't understand. Was it all worth it? You play me good just for a rush, just for
Welcome to the only show bringing cops and the community together for some real talk and some real listening. This is uncut. This is uncensored. This is Black and Blue Live. Hey, Black and Blue fam, what's going on? It's your boy Dale here. Like it says right there, right there, Dale. Welcome to the show, Black and Blue Live. This is the live version of the Black and Blue podcast. I thank everybody for coming in to the show today. We're going to have some fun. We got a real good one here for you today, so stay tuned for that. Right now, I just want to thank everybody for coming in. How's your weekend going? It's a beautiful day out here in Southern California. Wherever you are, I hope it's a beautiful day, beautiful weekend for you, and a blessed weekend, blessed week coming up for you as well. We are on a number of platforms right now. We are live right now on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So wherever you're at, make sure that you click that like button, participate in the show today, and let's get real with it. So, law enforcement has been taking some hits throughout the years, and recently we just been taking some hits. We've been, just taking the L. To be quite frank with you on this last thing that happened in Memphis, but we got to talk about what happened out there. Talk about some transparency and accountability in police work. So we got some reforms and all those sorts of pieces to this puzzle. So let's talk about it with my esteemed guests here, experts in law enforcement. So without further ado, let's get to it. All right, there. I think I brought them on one by one. I hit the wrong one here. Let me do this again. Let's get to it. Boom, right there. That was kind of a preview of who I'm going to show for you guys here today. Hey, this is live, ladies and gentlemen. This is live. Hey, I don't have producers like CNN, but I am the producer. But nonetheless, hey, just check this out. Our first guest here, he is the chief of police out in North Carolina, Apex, North Carolina. Everybody, please help me welcome to the show, Chief Jason Armstrong. There he is. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, Dale. How you doing, man?
I'm excellent. So what's going on? What's good with you out there in North Carolina today?
Man, just going good, man. Just finishing up the weekend, man. Getting ready for another long work week ahead of me, man. The grind continues.
Absolutely. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Apex.
Yes, sir. So I'm here in Chief of Police in Apex, North Carolina. We're in the Raleigh metropolitan area. I've been here in Apex for about a year and a half now. Prior to coming to Apex, I was the police chief in Ferguson, Missouri for 2 years. I came to Ferguson after coming from Georgia, where I spent the first 18 years of my career down in the Atlanta metro area in Georgia. So, just came up through the ranks just like everybody else, man. Blessed to get an opportunity, man, to serve as a police chief to try to make a difference and do what I can in the community.
Absolutely. And thank you for coming on and bringing your expertise. You're one outspoken as well. So we appreciate you and have a good conversation here today. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it.
All right. Next guest here is a retired special agent in charge, as a matter of fact, from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Everyone, please help me welcome to the show, Trevor Randall. How you doing, Trevor?
Doing good, Dale. Doing good.
How's it going out there? And you still in Georgia?
Still in Metro Atlanta.
All right.
Happy to be on the other side of things, but still engaged every day in law enforcement and law enforcement training. So we're glad to be back on with you talking about something that's very important.
Absolutely. And before we get to that, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and the agency that you just retired from.
I've been in law enforcement for 30 years. As many of you may know, my last 27 years in the state of Georgia, service to the citizens and other police agencies in the state of Georgia for 27 years. Again, like Chief mentioned, just was blessed and fortunate to have the opportunity to work my way up through the ranks of that agency up to special agent in charge and retired just a little over a year ago. Covered everything from, narcotics investigations, crimes against children, the elderly, obviously use of force investigations was one of the things that we had the unfortunate task of investigating in the state of Georgia, so quite a bit of experience with that as well.
All right. Well, wealth of knowledge and a little bit of outspokenness as well, like I said, for Chief Armstrong. So I appreciate you, and we're going to share some of that insight with our viewers here. So I appreciate you. Thank you. And the next guest here is a major with the Atlanta Police Department. Everyone, please help me welcome to the show, Major Aylin Mitchell. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, Dale. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. So it looks like we got three people from Georgia on the show here today. Hey, can't go wrong. I got Georgia on my mind, but kind of spread out now. Chief Armstrong's in North Carolina, and you were still in Atlanta. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do and where you do it.
Yes, still in Atlanta. So this is the start of my 17th year with the Atlanta Police Department. Currently a major in Zone 2, which is Buckhead area. If you've been to Atlanta, it's Northeast Atlanta. Currently in charge of 120 officers there. And actually the first black commander in that area since 1991. And so it's been a challenge and a learning experience to say the least. But I've had a pleasure of being on a variety of different assignments, from gang unit to auto theft to Red Dog. I was also the background and recruitment commander here in Atlanta, as well as the SWAT team commander. So been on a lot of crime suppression type units as an officer and supervisor. Units like Scorpion. So I'm excited to talk about that and their role in policing. But love what I'm doing and happy to be a part of the panel tonight.
Yes, and you mentioned both of those units that you were involved in, like the Scorpion type unit with Atlanta, but also in backgrounds, and that was an issue, a possible issue what's going on out there in Memphis. So we'll talk about that as well. So I appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
And last but certainly not least, he is a lieutenant out in Mount Rainier, Maryland. Everyone, please help me welcome to the show, Lieutenant David Calloway. How you doing, sir?
I'm outstanding, Dan. How are you? Good evening.
I'm excellent. Thank you for coming to the show, and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do and where you do it.
Sure, I'm a 14-year police veteran. I oversee newly promoted as a scanner. I'm a lieutenant. I oversaw our criminal investigations unit. Now I'm in that unit. I also oversee our internal affairs and background investigations, fleet evidence, you name it. I oversee it. I did was in Baltimore City School Police for a little bit, and a couple other agencies within Prince George's County. I helped start our criminal investigations unit with the Mount Rainier Police Department. So I'm having a blast.
All right. Hopefully I corrected some things on your audio portion there, but we got all that, and I appreciate you coming to the show with a wealth of knowledge as well. We're gonna have a good, robust conversation. So let's do it, guys. Let's do it. And this is the screen that you guys all saw earlier when I prematurely put everyone out on the screen. But our topic today is the Memphis incident renews talk of police reform. And we all know what that Memphis incident was. That was the incident with citizen Tyree Nichols and the 5, I don't necessarily want to call them officers, but they were employed as police officers for the Memphis Police Department. And they brutally beat Mr. Nichols, and he died later in the hospital. So we'll talk about that. And again, anyone out there, if you got any comments or questions, bring them on in to my esteemed panel of guests, and we'll make sure we get those answered for you guys. So first of all, let's just get to the heart of the matter. What did you guys think when you saw that video? I'm not going to play the video. I'm sure if anyone wants to see it that hasn't seen it, you can go on a number of outlets and check that out. But what did you guys think when you saw that video? We'll start with you, Chief Armstrong.
I mean, the first thing that came to mind in watching that video is, one, here we go again, and then two, why? Why was that young man subjected to that type of violence from those officers? Why did we have to see that happen again? It was uncalled for. The officers, were rightfully fired and rightfully charged for the actions that they took out there. But just raise the questions of when are we going to stop seeing these type things play out in law enforcement?
Yeah, I agree. Trevor.
Again, I would just have to echo what Chief mentioned. First thing I thought was, here we go again. Um, what pains me the most is I know that it's so difficult for those of us who are uh, black while wearing blue. As we talk about, we know that we're going to be faced with extreme backlash because the first thing that they're going to do is attack us for even wearing the gun and the badge anymore, being a part of all the different names that they call us, gangs and things of that nature. But we join these jobs and joined our forces and our agencies for the same reason that 99.9% of all the other law enforcement professionals did, and that's to serve and protect the public. So that's the first thing that usually comes to mind. Here we go again. And when we're, constantly fighting to bridge that gap with all communities, and it seems like, once we go a little bit forward, something like this just sets us completely back. And it just, it makes my heart just bleed because having that unfortunate task of policing the police and having arrested law enforcement officers, I'll tell you that it's not fun. It's a horrible feeling, but there's nothing worse than I deal with in the crimes that I have investigated in my 30 years in law enforcement than those perpetrated by someone wearing a badge. I absolutely detest it. And like I said, I can speak freely and say that now, from my heart. There's nothing worse.
Yep, there is nothing worse. Yeah. Uh, Major Mitchell.
Initially, I was just disgusted, disturbed, like everyone else, and like Chief said, just again, because after the protests and the riots of 2020, we saw a lot of people leave the profession, um, and it took us so long to build that community trust back with the community. Um, and where our recruitment was picking up and things were picking up in law enforcement, and then something like this happens, and it's like you're starting all over from scratch. There were so many issues that were wrong, with the training to supervision, and we'll talk about that later. Um, but just very, disgusted by it, and the officers rightfully, were charged and fired, and it's just a black eye, to our profession, and we're just going to have to build back that community trust and build those relationships back up through communication.
Yep. 100. And Lieutenant Calloway.
Yes, sir. Definitely embarrassing for all of us that wear the uniform and the badge with pride. Um, I want to say, if you look at the video and you close your eyes, it definitely does not sound anything what represent law. They sound like, really, to me, a bunch of thugs. The way that they were trying to apprehend, uh, Mr. Tyree is lost for words. I will say that the training is an issue. And as we know, that we'll speak about it later, I'm sure, but law enforcement do have excellent training. We have some of the best training. However, I don't think that they tapped, what they were supposed to do. They went definitely outside of the scope of how they respond. Even if someone ran, people are expected to run from police. Know how to conduct as professionals.
Yep. And we and just like you just said, yeah, people are expected to run from police, but we're expected to, pursue. And then once we catch them, we're supposed to, again, police work isn't a pretty profession when you take people into custody. But what we're supposed to do is go hard and fast. And once we get them into custody, it's supposed to stop, right? And
Absolutely.
as soon as we can get them into custody, it's over. It's done. So, And then I kind of likened it. I don't know if you guys ever saw that old Looney Tunes cartoon back in the day with the sheepdog and the coyote, and the sheepdog was protecting the sheep, and they clock in at the beginning of the day, and they even say hey to each other, hey John, hey Fred, and then they go off and do their thing, and and it's brutal, and at the end of the day, they clock out again, see you tomorrow. But we know this is going to happen. We know people are going to run from us, but we're supposed to be the professionals, and we're supposed to handle it with professionalism and training, and none of that was adhered to in that. Let me get to a comment real quick before we move on. Where is it? Right there. Maurice Landrum says the Memphis incident was horrible. There was lack of accountability and total disrespect for the law in that case. I couldn't agree more. As a matter of fact, I didn't bring up who we're talking about here today. That's who we're talking about, Tyree Nichols right there. And so he's the individual out in Memphis that these officers, if we want to call them officers, who they beat to death. And again, I won't show the video, but I will show these are at least the first 5 officers, Memphis officers that were charged with that participated in that beating. And so that's what we're dealing with here. So those officers that we just saw were involved in a unit called Scorpion. It's a crime suppression unit. I'm sure they're called different names all across the country. Out in my area, we call it multiple enforcement teams. What are you guys' thoughts on those types of units? I know sometimes it's a necessary evil. I wouldn't even call it an evil. It's something that we need to do. They're specialized in that field. They need to go out there and handle that business that regular patrol can't handle with the gang members and the guns and all that sort of stuff. So, but in this case, they obviously took their authority. They took their lack of supervision for one to another level. So we'll start with you, Major, since you talked about your commander of one of those units. What is your thought on those sorts of units?
Yeah, so I've been an officer and a supervisor over units like that. And, in order to effectively reduce crime, obviously we need community policing, right? We have to have the trust of the citizens. We have to have a partnership with the community in order to reduce crime. But also, you have to have proactive policing units that don't answer 911 calls and proactively police. But the thing about those units is you have to have supervision. You have to have frontline supervisors that are in the field with the officers, know what they're doing, reading their reports, checking their body worn camera footage, etc. And because the officers on those type of units, they have 8 hours and they're not answering 911 calls, so they're out there freely just doing whatever. And so if you don't have oversight and have supervisors that are on top of them, you can have bad incidents occur. I've seen it happen both as an officer and as a supervisor. And so, one, the officers have to hold each other accountable. They have to self-police in addition to, the supervision.
Yeah, absolutely. And A. Calloway says there needs to be checks and balances with those specialized units. Absolutely.
Yeah, there has to be.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I will, Dale. I would say it's definitely necessary, but add to that to be some type of strategic action plan with these units. I could my department, for example, we were getting hit with carjackings and robberies for the past 2 years. But to make it more an investigative type of strategy or put together rather than just like unit. And we've seen what happened with a lot of these street crimes units that we saw from New York City over the years when they first started from the 70s on, when the 80s was popping with a lot of drugs. We saw a lot of these street crimes, aggressive units taking down violent offenders. And we also see what happened in Baltimore City with the gun trace task force units. Kind of same level with the highest ranking person was probably a sergeant on a day-to-day basis overseeing it. And as we see a lot of times with these big city departments, the sergeant sergeants are the highest. Lieutenants are overworked. So lieutenants are not only overseeing a street crimes unit, but they're probably overseeing, a patrol unit, and they might be overseeing, evidence or some other unit. Is when these units, like street crimes, go out and bring in these guns or these, it's the quantity that matters, not the quality of the arrest. So, yeah, the sergeant's bringing in 20 guns a month, but advising that, it's the lieutenant's good job for bringing in, those 20 firearms, and that's it. And we're not reviewing the body,
Yeah.
they're not reviewing the use of force,
Yeah.
or about,
Lieutenant, your audio is cutting in and out again. Got a couple comments here about your audio as well. So if you could just log off and maybe get to a better Wi-Fi location, and we'll get back to your conversation. Because you made some great points, there. But before he comes back, let me just move on with this question here from Rodney Stearns. He asks, how can we get the same speed of accountability with white officers as we have with black officers? This was swift, no administrative leave and investigation. They were dealt with immediately. I've heard a bunch of comments like that on social media. What do you guys think about that?
Dale, let me jump in and take this one.
Yeah, it's a no-win situation. Go ahead.
So one thing that we got to be careful of is that we don't develop amnesia of what happened in 2020 when George Floyd was killed. Derek Chauvin was fired the next day. Derek Chauvin was charged 3 days after that. I know in this country, that's the first thing that we want to jump on is race, and we want to make everything a race issue. Sometimes it just comes down to right and wrong. And sometimes doing the right thing is done quickly. Sometimes doing the right thing takes a little bit longer than we want it to. And so, I've heard a lot of that in the wake of this, and people are trying to make this a black-white thing. This is not a black-white thing. Mr. Nichols was black. The officers were black. This was a right and wrong thing. Those officers were wrong for what they did to him, and how they treated him, and him losing his life was wrong. And so I understand, where a lot of that energy comes from, but we need to make sure that we're putting that energy in the right place, and not getting sidetracked by things that don't matter. We've seen cases, and we've had these things happen, unfortunately, where individuals are handled quickly. We've had some where they haven't been handled quickly, and a lot of variables play into that. These things happen in different jurisdictions. When things happen up north in the unions, there is a process that they have to go through, and there's certain protections that some unions have over their officers where, if the chief wanted to terminate an officer, they don't have the power and authority to do so. So there are a lot of variables that come into play with that. We don't need to get sidetracked on trying to bring in some things that don't apply in this case. We just saw it happen with Derek Chauvin after he killed George Floyd. He was fired the next day, and he was charged that same week. And so it's not just, they were black, and so this is the only reason that this happened to them. We've seen it happen the other way also, and we have to acknowledge that too.
Absolutely.
I agree. I agree with Chief Armstrong 100%, and I'll take it a step further. Kudos to the administration, to Chief Davis. I'll step in the hot seat here. I know that she's taken a lot of flack, but that was a decision that was made to terminate those officers right away. Again, a double-edged sword. There are some areas where you're going to get the backlash from maybe the public or maybe even the officers. We had a situation here in Atlanta that just opened up another can of worms where they felt like officers were terminated and then arrested and charged without their due process. So we have to be careful, as Chief said, that we don't turn this into a race thing. Every jurisdiction, every state, what level of investigation? Are we talking about local, state? We're talking about federal investigations. But what I find is that we spend more time educating the public about that because the average citizen just doesn't know how that process works. As Chief Armstrong mentioned, it's so important. There are some areas that if he wanted, as the chief, to say, hey, we're going to terminate you today, he is not able to do that administratively without going through that process that's been set forth by that jurisdiction. So once again, it's just kind of maybe an ignorance of the law or the statutory authority in different areas, different jurisdictions. But I would just go so far as to say we are damned if we do and damned if we don't in these situations. But it's
Yep.
definitely not a race issue. But just like doctors make mistakes. Patients die as a result of negligence, right? And there is a process for that they have to go through. So we have to look at it. This profession is no different. These are people, these are human beings who definitely screwed up in this case. And I know we'll talk about it a little more. And, there was a failure to turn the switch off. And they are going to be dealt with as they should.
Absolutely. And Chief Armstrong, Rodney Stearns, who asked that question, says, thank you for your answer.
Yes, sir.
Also, Dean Jenkins says, couldn't agree more with Chief Armstrong. Sometimes it's just as simple as right and wrong, not based upon race. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, getting back to our original question here, my original question about the street crime suppression units and their need and, why are they here? What do you guys still think about that? We had another comment here from Rodney Steed, says merely designated a unit as special doesn't make it a unit special. The selection criteria, training, and supervision makes the unit special. Yeah. What do you guys think about these officers that it sounds like most of them had less than 4 years on, right?
Yeah, I believe the most tenured one of the five had 6 years.
Okay.
But as a chief, I would say that's what we're seeing more and more of. And that's just, some of the fallout of what we're dealing with and the challenge that we face in the profession over the last several years, with one, retaining individuals, and recruiting new people to come into the profession. That's a challenge that it doesn't matter what part of the country you're in. We're all, seeing those challenges and having to deal with those. And I agree, just putting a group of individuals together and calling them a specialized unit doesn't, it doesn't cut it. Typically there's going to be some specialized training that's going to go along with that unit. Typically there's going to be some specialized equipment, for the type of work that those units are doing. One of the things that, we have to be careful of in talking about these units, and I know, Chief Davis has already disbanded the Scorpion unit, but in a lot of communities, the reasons that these units exist is because there's a crime problem, normally a violent crime problem. And having a violent crime problem, as a police chief, I'm responsible for that, and so I have to throw everything that I have to throw at that, and that's often where you see these units come from, is trying to get some of those issues under control, because the community members that live in those areas where they are the victims of these violent crimes, those are the ones that are constantly emailing you. Those are the ones that are constantly calling in or going to the council meetings, asking and begging, we need more resources out here. What are y'all going to do about these problems, the criminals that are in my neighborhood? And so we always have to find ways to try to combat that. And one of the gentlemen, spoke about it earlier, as far as, community policing and how we go out and do that. And one way in even having these specialized units is still approaching it from a community policing lens and what we're asking them to do. And it's not just, unleashing these individuals in the community just to get it done by any means necessary, because we see, that they could create more problems than solutions if they have that attitude in approaching it. But the work that they are charged with doing is an important work, because we see too much violence in some of these neighborhoods and communities where these units are often tasked and deployed to try to help things.
Yeah, absolutely. And but we were, basically alluding to lack of supervision on that unit. What is a supervisor? I know Major Mitchell, you spoke a little bit about that earlier. What is the responsibility of a supervisor on some of those sorts of units? I don't even think their supervisor showed up till maybe probably the end of that. What is the supervisor's responsibility in those sorts of units?
Well, to be out there with their people, not just reading their reports, right, and checking their body worn cameras, but being out there with them, teaching them the job and the role of the job and how to do it. For a lot of, in Atlanta anyway, we have several areas where a beat officer would not go in or can't go in for a variety of reasons. And so, units like that exist so they can go in those type of areas. But like Chief said, it starts with the community aspect of it, community policing, knowing the people in those communities, so that way when violent crimes do occur, they're willing to talk to the police and tell the police what's going on, and who did it, and who's responsible for it, and building those relationships up so that when you do have to go in there and enforce the law, it's not a backlash or an occupation feeling by the people that's there. You know, in what I've seen is that a lot of people in the community, they like those type of units, and there's a lot of different types of you know crime suppression type units, right? There's officers that focus on traffic stops. There's officers that focus on narcotics. There's officers that focus on vice type issues. So there's different types of units that focus on some things, and then they have some units that are kind of like a jack of all trades. But like Chief said, when there's violent crime that's going on, the communities, they're saying, where are these specialized units at? People are getting robbed. People are getting shot. People are getting carjacked. What are you guys doing about it? And the average beat officer is just going from call to call to call, answering 911 calls, and so they don't have time to do those kind of things. And so, you need them, but the supervisors, whether it's the sergeant or the lieutenant, has to be out there with them in the field, seeing what they're doing, seeing how they're talking to citizens, seeing how they're interacting with citizens, making sure that they have probable cause, and making sure that they have, reasonable suspicion for their stops. And when you don't have, oversight and you don't have supervision, it leads to officers doing stuff like what we saw in Memphis.
Yep. And what we saw out here in LA with Rampart.
Right.
Yep. Let me get a couple more of these comments back on the screen here before we move on. Rodney Stearns again says the media does a disservice because it is framed differently for white officers, so we are not privy to the information you have. We definitely need more education on the process behind this for each department when these things happen. And then A. Calloway just said vicarious liability. We all know liability. So again, we're going to talk about accountability and transparency. We're talking about the Memphis chief, and they were swift, and they released the body cam footage, and they released all the information that they had. What are you guys' thoughts on transparency on releasing all that information to the public? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Dale, I'll jump out there and just talk about that a little bit again, because the young man that acknowledged that, they do need to be educated on these processes. And that's where, having a good public affairs or public information officer that's really strong comes in to help your agency and that city, that municipality, overcome this or get through this, because this is a crisis. If we're to be honest, was a crisis for the agency. So again, here in Georgia, I will tell you, and depending on what jurisdiction we're in, a lot of that is going to be determined by the prosecuting authority. There have been instances where the district attorney who was going to prosecute that case did not want that information released immediately until it had been reviewed. And again, sometimes the agency's hand may be tied again, but when there's a delay in releasing that information, we also understand that the public, the wheels start turning, and that's when some of the conspiracy theories are cooking, right? But releasing that information again, because there's been so much, negativity surrounding some of the decisions. I give kudos to Chief C.J. Davis on releasing that information. I'm sure that was done in concert with the prosecuting authority and those that she answers to, but as fast as they could, getting that information out there. Of course, a lot of people question why it was done, from the Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock, and we all know what that's about. We wanted people to be able to demonstrate and do that peacefully, but it is very important, and I think they did a really good job of being as transparent as they could. The information was out there for you to watch in its entirety if you chose to, or you could turn it off after a certain piece, but they released everything so you could then form your opinions as to what happened, and what the actions of the deceased was versus the officers and vice versa. So I would have to definitely say that was something that they did right, and that was again done very swiftly. As an investigating agency that has to come in and collect all of that information, we do rely on the prosecutor. We get guidance from them, and also with our agency head to determine when that information should be released. But anytime you have a sensitive situation like this, where there's going to be, protest and demonstration, it's always going to be the best policy, as hard as it's going to be for people to watch, to get it out there soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd be remiss if I didn't, I said I wasn't going to show the video, but I do want to make clear this is what happened to Mr. Nichols. That was Tyree. That's what those officers did to him. Okay, so let's not forget that's the sort of brutality that they meted out to him for something. I don't know. Let's talk about that piece as well. So, everyone's talking
Yeah,
about training.
let me jump in and
Go ahead, Chief.
speak about the transparency piece real quick. Um, and in making that decision on releasing the video and all those other things, you really have to take everything into account of not just the impact on the family, not just the impact on the community, the impact on what prosecution is going to look like when criminal charges are part of it. But getting back to what we were talking about earlier, as far as how things are different depending on what part of the country you're in, here in North Carolina, if an incident like that happened, I, as the police chief, have zero authority and power to release video footage. It is state law here. Whether I want to release it or not, I solely do not have that power and authority. A petition has to get sent to a judge, and a judge has the ultimate decision on whether or not we can release body camera footage or any footage publicly pertaining to an incident involving a police officer. No matter if it's a serious incident, as what happened with Mr. Nichols, or if it's just a regular traffic stop where somebody got a speeding ticket. For that video footage to be released, I don't have any control over that. It has to be a petition that goes to a judge. And so, getting back to the education piece, it's just, we see these things happen. And with social media and people's access to information, we see all of these things from where we sit, or what part of the country we sit in. And so, we apply that lens to it. And oftentimes, we have no clue of what the rules and what the laws or what the guidance are in the other states of the jurisdiction where these things are happening. And that's where, if I always tell people, if you're following an incident, don't just rely on what you get from social media. Like, actually go to the local news affiliates and try to get your information from locally and read up about it locally, because they often, they're able to report on it, knowing what the facts are and knowing how things work, where, you're just following along with social media. You're not going to get a lot of that information.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, people say
Dale,
media has their own agenda too. So
yeah, it's different in Maryland. In Maryland, if someone wants to see a body camera footage, they just can put in for FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. If it's pertaining to certain evidence or the case that we're working, we can try to not necessarily shield it, but just say, hey, it's on investigative purposes. But how can you with that video is treacherous, and I think they did the right thing definitely by releasing that video, because the 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 assault was there. That was pretty much nothing to investigate at that point. I mean, it's like that's out there, so let's go ahead and release that. And I think they did a very good job of doing that. As we saw in the past, people think a lot of times law enforcement is trying to hide video footage and or prolong it, and a lot of times they were doing it because they wanted to, protect the officers, or give the officers, or uh, the upper hand of thinking that they were doing their jobs. But clearly, it's different days and time, and what affects us. I remember growing up and watching the Rodney King beating. I was tell you my age, how young I was. I was probably like 5 or 6 years old when that video footage that came out, and I
Man,
remember
you
my
making a brother
dad
feel
being so
old.
upset. I
You making
know,
a brother
right?
feel old. I was like almost I was in college when that.
But I remember that affecting the whole entire nation. I mean, I just remember, and it kind of brought me back to that memory. Even with George Floyd, even though that happened thousands away from Maryland, it still affects us here in Maryland. It affects us in North Carolina and Georgia. So it's no longer a local thing. If someone does something in North Carolina, or if someone does something in North Carolina now, it's going to affect us in Maryland. Someone does something in Maryland, it's going to affect us in California. So we are a law enforcement community, and we do have to keep that in mind of how we're acting when we're on the streets.
Yep. And again, Rodney Stearns that has been asking some very poignant and questions here. It says, this is very informative. I love your feedback and patience with us that don't understand these things. I really appreciate this forum. You are changing my perception of how these unfold. Appreciate that. And another comment here is Rodney Stearns, thank you for being willing to learn about the parameters that those of us in law enforcement leadership have to operate in. And this is from Dean Jenkins. Says, I appreciate you. Thank you for all those comments as well. So, again, a lot of people have been talking about that did see the incident, and even those that didn't, just saw snips of it. Training. What do you guys think about, the training of these officers? I personally think it had nothing to do with training. I think those officers had the training and they just didn't use it. If you watch the video, what they said to them, I personally, I don't know the facts. I think it may have something personal involved with it, but I don't know that. So don't quote me on that. But there was zero tactics. 5 high schoolers could have wrapped that guy up and got him into custody. So there was something more to that. But what do you guys think about that?
I think training had nothing to do with it. Like I believe that law enforcement have some of the top of the line training in the nation. We're trained. Now they're giving patrol officers crisis intervention training. They're giving us de-escalation training. They're giving us defensive tactics training. All types of stuff. There's different non-lethal weapons out here that we can use now to help restrain a suspect or someone who's running from us. So training definitely wasn't the fact that they just didn't do anything that they were trained to do. It was, like I said, if you can close your eyes and listen to the video, it sounded like a bunch of thugs. When I was watching it, I remember hearing one of the officers telling him to watch out, almost like, let me get my lick in. And then he says, I'm going to baton the S out of him, and it's just like they were taking turns trying to get licks, off this young man. Highly, very disturbing and very unprofessional, but
Yep.
There was no training at all being used.
Yep. Absolutely.
The
Or
seat
Tamar?
that I sit in, Dale, I will tell you that I think it was a combination. And let me tell you why. Having to deal with use of force investigations day in and day out previously, I will tell you that not a lot of times you will have individuals who speak from a place of what they know they were trained to do in their agency. I will tell you, looking at hundreds and hundreds of agencies, they are not all created equally. Okay. Everybody
True.
doesn't have a standard. We do have a standard in law enforcement, but I will tell you, working with some of the small sheriff's offices, for example, to the big metro city police departments, and I think Chief Armstrong will agree that training and those standards are going to be as strong as that leader that comes into that agency to say, okay, if things are on par, great. How can we improve things from here? If things are not, then we need to start from scratch and everybody's going to have to be retrained. I saw a little bit of both. When I
Mm.
talked earlier about not being able to turn the switch off, one of the things that I was just literally, screaming, not out loud, but to myself was these individuals have been trained when it comes to the use of force and pain compliance. It became very apparent to me that the individual was not responding to that. And you know, as well as I do, being a police officer, there's a place for that. When we have that first tier, of our encounters where someone doesn't do what we ask them to do, as in the initial, stop. If somebody doesn't respond to a taser, somebody doesn't respond to being pepper sprayed, my training tells me very quickly that we have got to change our tactics. It tells me very quickly that pain, that negative stimuli is not going to. You can't beat someone into compliance that doesn't feel pain. That's what I'm trying to say. We know there are two categories of individuals that can happen with, whether that's a mental health consumer. Certainly, I've had interactions with individuals who did have some type of substance in their system. They're not going to feel that and they're not going to respond to that. I just remember thinking there is some lack of training here. At the end, you hear someone maybe mention, if there could have been something else on board, because no one can sustain those types of injuries and continue to move and function. But you can if there are certain things going on. But again, that comes from training. So I think it was a little bit of both, not giving any excuses, but where I sit, I know that all agencies, even, here in the state of Georgia, even in Metro Atlanta, they're not created equally as far as their level of training that they're required to have. We have our basic peace officer standard and training that says you have to get X amount of hours or of this or that, just like with firearms. There are some agencies that only require that their officers go to the range twice a year. We train year round, but again, that's based on the leadership of my agency and the standard that they want to set. So I will say that it is oftentimes a combination of both from where I sit, looking at hundreds of agencies when it comes to use of force investigation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, looking back at it, a lot of it were tactics and training. I think about, the pepper spray. One of them pepper sprayed his partners, and and they, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that is training for sure. But just standing him up, and that part of the video there where they stood him up and went to town on him with the baton. Like Lieutenant Calloway said, "I'm a baton the s out of you," and all that sort of stuff. To me, that again, that wasn't training, so it was both, like you said, Trevor. Yep.
And Dale, let me jump in real quick. And while we can all point out, the training deficiencies in that video and what we saw, but one thing that I do not apply a training lens from was just the intent of those individuals on violence. Um,
That
you
part.
know, if we have to use force against somebody, using that force is to get that individual in the handcuffs, is what it's supposed to be designed to do, is to get that individual secured in handcuffs. And those individuals, it didn't seem like that's what they were intent on. It seemed that they were more intent on violence and just exuding their domination, if you will, over another individual, instead of their objective being putting this individual in the handcuffs. And I don't put all of that on training. Man, I like I said, and watching that video, my mind was going crazy because I'm trying to. There's one point where he's on the ground. Mr. Nichols is on the ground. One officer has one wrist, and another officer has his other wrist. But everybody's yelling at him, "Give me your hands! Give me your hands!" Like y'all have his hands. How about somebody yell, "Get your handcuffs out so we can get him in handcuffs real quick and end this"? That's not where their head was at. Their head was on violence. And that's what played out, unfortunately, for Mr. Nichols. And unfortunately, he lost his life in that situation. And so, we could talk about the training piece of it all day long. Um, we know to become a police officer, you get trained in use of force, you get trained in arrest techniques, you get trained on how to handcuff people. So we know they had training in that arena. What level, what quality, none of us know because none of us work for Memphis. But what I do know is, in watching that video, they weren't trying to get him in handcuffs like they should have been trying to get him in
Right.
handcuffs. They were intent on being violent with him and exuding their domination and their force over him more than they were worried about getting him in handcuffs and ending it.
That part right there. Yep. Yep. So, all of us here are African American, and we all saw that video, and we all has felt some sort of way with that. What do you guys feel specifically as African Americans when you saw that video? As Black folks, knowing that there's been a history of that in our country with in regards to law enforcement and citizens and police brutality. But then you saw African American officers perpetrating this. What was you guys' thoughts specifically as being Black? Lieutenant, you're muted.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
For me, it hit home. Definitely hit home. I think when all this was going on, with the white officers getting a lot of the backlash about police brutality, um, with the Black officers, it felt like we still kind of had a voice and some trust. And we can go out in the community and kind of just speak to people about, just give them some type of comfort. And not to say that it wasn't going to happen with African American officers or Black officers, but it was just it's a different swag if we keeping it real. And let me say, like, I remember growing up in Washington D.C., Southeast D.C., and if you saw a white officer come through, there was some type of fear or intimidation factor behind it. But then if you had an interaction with a Black officer, it was a little bit more relaxed. It was a little bit more, hey, he looks like me. And so, that also kind of motivated me to be a police officer. But as you starting to see what's going on now inside the community with Black officers, doing this, or Hispanic officer, whoever, no matter what the race is bad. It almost brings, like, we lost that trust again with the community. So it just makes it that much harder to gain community trust. But it definitely hit home.
Yeah. Major Mitchell.
For me, I was embarrassed by it. It just from the looks of the officers, some of them were probably the same age as him or close to the same age. But like Chief said earlier, I don't think it's about race. I think it's just about horrible human behavior. The way they treated him, the way they talked to him, like Chief stated, you can tell that they wanted violence. The communication was from the initial stop was just bad. And so, as a Black officer, like LT said, trying to gain the trust, of the community, especially when people's opinions and perceptions of law enforcement because of past relationships isn't good. And you are sort of like, a bright spot or hope, for people in your community when they see someone that looks like you and speaks like you and acts like you, and you represent the good parts of law enforcement, right? And then they see Black officers doing it. It's like, man, now we have to, because they, people say, see, you guys are all alike,
Yeah.
and it's tough. It's tough,
Yeah. Yep.
and you know we
Yep.
just have to work every single day to get to build that trust back, and to let the community know that these 5, 6 former officers don't represent all of us that are in this profession.
Right. Right. And I will say, I started this this show, this podcast, a few years back as one humanizing the badge, bridging the gap and all that sort of things to show, the community out there that we are people too as officers, and we are people too as African Americans in law enforcement. But again, that's the other side of it too. That yeah, we're human, and as long as you got humans working any job, like your boy said earlier, in medicine, things are going to happen because we are human. And the thing is to be able to recognize when people do bad and hand out justice and discipline accordingly, regardless of the race. So, absolutely.
Yeah,
And on that,
that's so important to say, regardless of race,
yep.
because I don't, I have to respond to your question. I didn't feel anything when I saw that these officers were, or that they looked like me. I wasn't particularly shocked. I wasn't particularly saddened. There wasn't a sense of, well, you guys know better because he was black. It doesn't matter to me who it is. We are held to a higher standard. We're here to serve and protect. We're here to do what we need to do and use that minimal amount of force that's necessary. I didn't have a problem with much of anything, minus the comments on the initial stop. I did see, where there's, someone who's getting up, they're trying to tase, they're trying to do all these things. And it tells me for them to be able to get up and run away, they're pretty strong for whatever reason. What happened after that, part two, I call it just a classic. I'm aging myself, but we call it the PLP. As Chief said, it was, you all say violence. It was punitive, in my opinion. It was punitive. It was, you ran from us, and we're going to teach you a lesson not to do that. It did not matter to me what they look like. I want people to be just as quick to be angered by this as they do when they say it's the quote unquote unarmed black man and it's a white officer. I've tried to tell people for years, this happens all across the country, all across the globe. No matter what the race is, it just gets picked up more by the media because it's more sexy to talk about the white officer who has, abused or used excessive force of a black unarmed man or shot and killed them. But again, I come from a different place and space. I go to facts. You have to do your research, as I urge the public, do your research to find out how many of these incidents actually occur. There's only a few of them that are sensationalized, but it does not matter the race at the end of the day.
Yep. Yep.
And Dale, just to add one last point on this, is, man, one thing that I've tried to do throughout my career is to be a student of the profession and a student of law enforcement. And if you are a student of law enforcement, you know that this is not something that is new. I remember I was talking to an elderly gentleman one time. It was an elderly white male who had policed back in the 60s, back in the 60s, early 70s. And one of the things that he told me was he felt sorry for the black residents in his zone where he worked, because he said the black officers, where at that time black officers were being hired into the profession for the first time, and he said a lot of the black officers treated the black people in the community worse than the white officers did, because they were trying to, get the affection of the white officers that they worked with. And so, a lot of what people attack us on is the history of policing and the culture of policing. That is a very real thing. And you're not, just because we are African Americans in this profession and the ones that came before us doesn't mean that they are absolved from that. there are a lot of variables and issues, that have contributed to this. It's just, in this day and age, and with social media and how information is able to be thrown at us, nonstop, 24/7. It's able to be sensationalized a certain kind of way, and they market it a certain kind of way. But seeing that these were black officers, wasn't a shock to me. It didn't make me feel any different being a black officer, being a black police chief, because I know human beings, and I know how flawed human beings are, and that flawedness in us doesn't matter, what the color of our skin is.
Absolutely. So for the, there's what, close to 800,000 officers in this country. And, like Trevor said earlier, this doesn't happen with every officer out there. But, for the ones that are left behind, the ones that don't do these sorts of things, and specifically the ones in Memphis that have to deal with these officers. I know Lieutenant Calloway spoke about, what happens in Memphis affects him out in Maryland as it affects me out here in California. But, how what can be done for those officers that are left behind, at least on the management side of things?
I believe, definitely start more community engagement. One thing we do is the Citizens Academy. Love the Citizens Academy. It allows us to not only bring them into our profession of what we do, but it also allow us to hear from the community. Allow them to question us as to why we use certain tactics. Like for us, for instance, we have like the shoot or don't shoot simulator. Some citizens don't feel comfortable firing that simulator gun. That's okay. We don't force them or make them. We let them see our use of force policy. We have now a police advisory board that they don't have investigative powers, not for, well, directly for our city, but they do some type of oversight. We allow them to look at our budget and allow them to make suggestions on policy changes. So that's just some of the things. Getting out with our youth, the Police Explorer program. I know a lot of agencies already have them, but we just continue to do more community police work. We hope and pray that they continue to be effective and help build that trust.
Yep. Anybody else?
One of the things that we have to make sure that we do is stay true to who we are as a profession, and what that looks like in the communities that we serve, because that answer is different in every community, and what my community needs from me in Apex may be different than what Major Mitchell's community or his zone needs from him in Atlanta, and how we do that is when we have these incidents happen, is, man, we can't hide from them and we can't shy away from them. These are things that we have to talk about, and we have to have that interaction with our local community so they understand what they can expect from us, and if they feel as though anything is going on with us, who they need to contact or how they can contact us to bring that information forward, because of our level of commitment to hold ourselves accountable and to make sure that we don't tolerate any activity of like we saw with these officers in Memphis. But it's just something that we have to carry, that we know is going to be a challenge for all of us. We all take a step back when something like this happens. This nation took a major step back after George Floyd was killed, and just what we saw, the level of violence toward law enforcement in the aftermath of that. And so it's something that we understand the sensitivity of it, and we have to find ways to use it as motivation and for fuel for us to do more work in the communities and in the areas that we serve.
Yeah. What about the officers that work for Memphis?
It's tough for them right now. It is extremely tough for them. As I'm not sure if everybody saw it or not, but just a couple of days ago, one of the officers was shot in the line of duty.
Yeah.
At a call at a library. Now, I haven't heard any follow up on it. If they think as though it was motivated by what happened with the Tyree Nichols incident or not. But that's something that you have to be mindful of. Just like I said, when something like this happens, there's unfortunately at times been a violent narrative of against law enforcement. I experienced it being a chief in Ferguson after George Floyd was killed. we were severely attacked. They tried to burn down our police department in Ferguson after George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis. And so, to say that, retribution is not real, and that's not something that all of the officers that are down there patrolling and serving in Memphis right now are experiencing, we wouldn't be honest with ourselves. It's absolutely something that's at the forefront. And this is where your officer safety and just your vigilance and making sure that you're mindful of what's going on around you has to be at an all-time high, because you just never know with how terrible a action that was by those officers against Mr. Nichols. Somebody may be emboldened to try to get payback, if you will, against one of the officers down there. And so they just have to be careful right now, because it's a very sensitive place to be.
Yep, absolutely. All right, guys. This is a pretty heavy topic here today that we were talking about, and I appreciate the conversation. But before we get you out of here, let's lighten the mood here a little bit with a little trivia game here I got for you before I get you out of here. And let me get this started here for you. In this game, Family Game Night, and you guys' category today is.
No, I'm just kidding. Wait, hang on, I got another call. Who this? Oh, hi, Mama.
Who dis? What kind of way is that to answer the phone?
I'm sorry, Mama.
Your category today is Who Dis? I'm going to, here we go, specifically famous movie quotes. I'm going to give you a quote from a famous movie, and anybody that tells me what movie or what character said that gets a point. And the one with the most points, obviously, is the winner. So pretty simple there. Anybody got any questions? Pretty simple. Let's do it. All right, here's your first one here. Hey, Auntie.
Black Panther.
Black Panther is correct. Yes. Well, wrong one. There you go. Your name is your buzzer. That was Killmonger from Black Panther. So you get the point there, Chief Armstrong. Just like that. Just like that, guys. So here's your next one. They call me Mr. Tibbs. They call me Mr. Tibbs. Anybody? Going once, going twice. Nobody got that one. Nobody saw In the Heat of the Night, Virgil Tibbs.
Oh, man.
No, that's a little before your time there. Look up on the classics. That's a classic. Sidney Poitier there, but okay, so nobody got the point for that one. How about this one here? His mama named him Clay. I'ma call him Clay.
Chief Armstrong, Coming to America.
Chief Armstrong said that one. Said it first. Who was that?
Coming to America.
Coming to America is correct. Yes. Morris in Coming to America. All right, in the barbershop. All right, time for everybody to get on the board here. Chief Armstrong going to run away with this. Come on, here's your next
He
one.
watches TV.
Yeah, movies. Sit your $5 ass down before I make change. Armstrong said it first. Armstrong said it first. Who is it?
New Jack City.
New Jack City is correct.
There's a delay on my side. Show me some love in Maryland. There's a delay.
Good response.
Yeah, Nino Brown said that. Sit your $5 ass down before I make change. All right. Come on, guys, get on this. Either they don't know, don't show, or don't care about what's going on in the hood.
Armstrong, that's Boys in the Hood.
Armstrong.
Dope Boy said that.
Oh boy. You ain't lying, Trevor. Trevor, yeah, he does
spent
know.
a lot of time watching TV when he was here in Atlanta.
None of y'all knew that one though? You're just not fast enough.
I knew it. It's a delay.
Yeah. The delay. Come on, everybody got that delay. Here's your next one. You is kind, you is smart, you is important.
Oh my gosh.
Randall, The Help.
Randall. The Help is correct.
Help.
Yes. That is Abilene from The Help. All right, so you get on the board there. So we got Chief Armstrong with 4. Trevor's got 1, and man, Aylin and David 0. Come on, get on the board, guys. Let's go. Come on. You got to coordinate.
Callaway
Chief
Friday.
Armstrong, Boomerang.
Callaway, you were wrong. It is not from Friday.
Yeah, threw out the wrong movie, man. It's Boomerang.
Oh,
Chief
Boomerang.
Armstrong.
It is Boomerang. Yes.
I know it was John Witherspoon.
Same dude.
He did say that on Friday too, though.
Yeah,
You
he
got
wasn't
to
Friday.
coordinate.
Got to coordinate. Oh man, all right. You had the right idea there, LT. Come on, here we go. When did you fall in love with hip hop?
Callaway.
Chief Armstrong, Brown Sugar.
Callaway said that. Is it love and basketball? That is incorrect.
Chief Armstrong, Brown Sugar.
Callaway, just stop answering.
It is Brown Sugar, yes.
I got the right characters.
You did.
Dale,
Twice in a row.
It's humiliating.
It's all good.
Oh, it's all good.
Chief Armstrong is the movie guru.
Yeah, I see that. Come on, Aylin, you gonna get on here?
Man, I was probably 10 when these movies came out.
Oh, come on now. You wasn't 10 when Black Panther came out. Come on. All right, here we go.
Why
Here's
do
your
that
next
one?
one.
I was just slow.
You just slow. All right, here's your next one. I'm poor, black, I might even be ugly.
Randall,
Dear God, I'm
the
here.
color
Randall.
purple.
That is the color purple.
The
Yes.
color purple.
Sally in
I'm
the color
aging
purple.
myself now. I know those old movies.
All right. A few more here for you guys. You know the difference between you and me? I make this look good.
Callaway.
Callaway. Come on. 3, 2, 1.
Men in Black.
Men in Black, I'll give it to you, yes. I'll give it to you, yes.
He felt bad for you, Callaway.
Oh, man.
I got it.
You got that one. All right. How old are you when this one came out, Aylin?
When did that come out? 2000?
Something like that, yeah. All right. Here go your next
14,
one.
15.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
Callaway,
I double dare you.
Friday.
Callaway, go ahead.
Friday, too. Next
Oh,
Friday.
that is not Friday. I dare you, MFer. What is that? Go ahead, Chief.
All right,
Say
you
what
lost me,
again?
'cause I thought it was next Friday.
Anybody? That's Jules and Pulp Fiction. Maybe pull the gun on that one dude in the house with those 3
That's
young
right.
cats. He said, "Does Marcellus look like a bee?" And the dude kept saying, "What? Say what again?"
This is hilarious.
Yes. All right. Next one. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock
Callaway,
landed on
Malcolm
us.
X.
Callaway, what? Callaway.
Malcolm X.
It is Malcolm X.
Finally.
They tied
I
up,
was
but I
5
think
when that came out.
read up on your history and watch classic movies, man. You just can't watch the stuff that's out today. Nick at Night, man. Nick at Night. All right, last one. So I think this is a foregone conclusion that Chief Armstrong won, but we'll just do this for giggles. Out on the street, I tell them H's the truth. I lie to you because I care about your feelings.
Callaway.
Callaway. I know you know it.
On the tip of my tongue.
I'll give you a hint. I hate you,
Yes.
Jody.
I know. Baby Boy.
Baby Boy is it? Yes. You made it close there in the end, but we do have a winner that can only be one, and that is Chief Armstrong. I hate you, Jody. I love that movie.
Congratulations, Chief.
Yes.
Congrats.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys. You guys are good sports on that. But let's reel it back in, and I appreciate you guys participating in this conversation today. So on the way out, let's leave my viewers and listeners with some words of wisdom. We'll start with you, Chief Armstrong.
Man, I just want to say, thanks for everybody that tuned in to hear us out on this platform. This is what we got to do to make things better. This is what we got to do to ensure that this profession moves in a direction that I think all of us want to see it move in a direction that communities can be proud of the men and women that serve in their areas. And so, we need people to stay engaged. We need people to continue the discussion, to keep the dialogue going. That's the only way that we're going to see some real change in this country. And so I appreciate everybody and your commitment to seeing this through. And it's always a pleasure and an honor for me to join these platforms to lend my voice to the discussion.
Appreciate you, Chief. Trebor?
I would leave you all with this. I appreciate everyone that did tune in, chime in, leave comments, ask us questions. That's what it takes. We always notice that the individuals that we really need to have these conversations with a lot of times don't participate in these forums. So take what you learned today. If you learned something new, as you all mentioned about the jurisdictional piece, about why you may or may not be able to see body cam footage. It's not that we're trying to hide something, but there are different rules and statutes that apply depending on where you are. Take an opportunity to educate someone else. At the dinner table several times, be the change that people come to me and talk about the
Started to lose you there at the end there,
how they
Trebor.
feel.
Started to lose you there at the end there.
There's a serious competition going on. Back gone.
You there? Can you hear us? You see us? We there?
I can
right.
hear you.
All right. Yeah, you started cutting out there towards the end, but appreciate you for everything there. Major Mitchell.
First, I just want to say thank you for having me on the show. I'm glad to be a part of the podcast. I would just say to everybody, be engaged with your community. Get to know your police department. If your police department does have a Citizens Police Academy, go to it. If you have neighborhood meetings or association meetings where the police are there speaking, go there, ask the tough questions. It's really about communicating, with your local police department so that you have that relationship with them, so that they are transparent with you, because that's the only way that we're going to solve the issues that we have is if we're all working together, one team, law enforcement and community. And also just remember that, the police come from the community. The police are your neighbors, your people you see at the grocery store, people you see at church. When I'm walking down the street, I don't have a uniform on. No one knows that I'm the police. I'm a black man in America. And so just, remember that the police come from the community and they're human. And, we do make mistakes, but not, a couple bad ones don't represent everyone that's a part of the profession.
That part right there. 100. And LT.
My take on this is just, if I had to leave some final words, it's just try to humanize the badge as much as possible. If you're on patrol if you're out on patrol or if you're out, in any capacity in law enforcement and you're out there with the community, just simple good morning, hello, how you doing? Start a conversation with the citizens. Definitely, I'm a big, so big on officers, still having a lot of contact with the youth, going to the schools. If you see kids out there playing sports, get out your police cruisers and play basketball, play football. Just engage with the public so they can see that we're also too are human beings, and then maybe start a conversation. Maybe you start as a police officer, start that tough conversation and say, hey, what do you think about this case? What do you think about this incident that happened? And that helps let them know that you don't stand for that type of behavior. So continue to do what you do and stay safe.
Absolutely. Excuse me for that. And before we get out of here, Rodney Stern says, it makes me happy to see all you here. I'm so proud of all of you, and I hope that God keeps you all safe and this kind of dialogue continues.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, guys, I appreciate you. You guys on the panel, stay right there, and I'll be back in a minute. Hey, that was a great conversation we had with these guys today. I appreciate everybody for joining in on this conversation. This was fun today. It was much needed, much needed. And like we were all saying, it doesn't matter if these officers were black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever. Wrong is wrong. And these officers got dealt with swiftly and appropriately. So let's pray for peace out there in Memphis and everywhere else. Officers out there, keep your head on the swivel until this subsides. But again, continue on this conversation. I appreciate all you guys. Again, Robert Steed, I appreciate you saying a great panel tonight. Thank you, everybody. My name is Dale. This is Black and Blue Live. Until next time, stay black and blue. I'll holla at you.
Smoke spirals off your cigarette. Door slam to figure silhouettes. Is this over? Is this over? Is this over? Can this be over now? Is this over? Is this over? Is this over? Can this be over now? Baby, I surrender. I can't take it anymore. I don't want